and you click more.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Kirstin, how are you? Welcome. And Anne, and Lauren, welcome, welcome.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
Lauren, where are you
St.
located?
Louis.
St.
St.
Louis.
Louis.
Wonderful. Thank you. I have 1:30 Eastern time, but we'll just give about 1 or 2 more minutes for people to hop on. The people who joined early, we were just checking weather, and it's been rainy in many of our states and areas. How is everyone else doing weather-wise?
Same. Yes, very rainy at this moment.
Oh, at the
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Sue DeFerrari, Sister Sue, and passed on the information to me. So I'm joining for the first time down in Miami, Florida, and it is really hot and humid, but a nice clear day.
Well, welcome for your
Thank
first
you.
time.
I feel like I'm just sort of calling somewhere I don't know, but yeah, go ahead.
And in Detroit, it is around 88
It's,
and humid, but clear.
Great, Anne. Thank you. Hey, Emily, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Peter. Hey, Ben.
Hello, I'm back. Good to see Bob Dressel on the call. Hi, Bob. I had an email with him last week. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, and Sue, I don't know if I've met Sue before. Nice to see you. Sue DeFerrari.
Hi, I just introduced myself, coming in from Miami at Morningstar Renewal Center. Sister Sue was, kind enough to share the info with me.
Right on.
Morning.
Yeah. Morning, Maureen.
Good morning. Franciscan Center in Tampa, Florida, and it's 90 here. That's low.
It cooled off, I was going to say. Yeah.
So the virus does not worry about hot weather. It has nothing to do with that.
Hi, Claire. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Nancy, I'm anxious to hear about your call from last week.
Oh, well, I'll fill you in a little bit on the side.
We'll talk.
Interested in hearing what's happening with you too.
Well, wonderful. So I think to keep with time, and there's so many new faces, so welcome. Ben, are there any housekeeping notes or anything you want to mention before we begin?
I don't think so. I'm a little, yeah, I'm just trying to check in and make sure that I know these faces too. I'm right there with you. This is wonderful. No, I don't have housekeeping notes right now.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Justine Johnson. I'm the Associate Director of Kirkridge Retreat and Study Center in Bangor, Pennsylvania, and I've offered support and I'm supporting the Retreat Center collaboration with community calls through COVID-19. And Ben also does that. So many of you have probably been in contact with Ben leading up to this. And we're going to have time to introduce ourselves and get to know the centers that are represented or the organizations represented here with us today. But first, we really wanted to touch base with 2 retreat centers who have been on various calls to see what they're learning and what they're doing in response to COVID-19. And then we'll have some crosstalk and questions and conversations. So really that's the setup. It's going to be relatively informal today. and we'll just have a wonderful dialogue. The last couple community calls that we've had every Tuesday have been really heart-centered, really offering emotional support to you all as leaders and staff of retreat centers and organizations doing a lot of care for your communities. And we realized we kind of needed another pulse check on how we're doing with COVID-19 when we're thinking about reopening, re-entering, and renewing our spaces and our places, the work we really do. Physical, virtual, a mixture of both. What does that all look like for your retreat centers? So not to spend too much time on the context before we get into the nitty gritty, but I'm grateful for Paul and Kirstin to kind of give us about 5 to 10 minutes each of the information they've shared. So they're going to talk about to introduce their retreat centers and then what have been their greatest learnings. And then after that, we're going to open it up for questions for both of them for about 10 minutes, and then I'll kind of give the next chunk of the time together. So Paul, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, Paul Mach. I'm at Lindenwood Retreat and Conference Center. Been here for about a year, so this is kind of an interesting thing to move into. We are a very rural area. We're about a half hour from South Bend. Farming country, so we're really not in a city type situation where we're close to anybody. So we are run by the Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ community, but they have the convent over there. The retreat center is a total separate building, so in starting off, we've started in June with a small group of 6. We're able to take them through their 3-4 day retreat, and then we actually had a group of about 15 come in, and it still worked very well with their group. They were just very excited that we were able to still have their retreat because they had quarantined themselves for 14 days before coming because they were coming from many different places. One of the things with having the smaller retreat, one of the things you're going to find is when you start to do retreats again, because things haven't been running and working for a number of days, we had pretty much an issue with something every single day. First day it was hot water had gone out. Second day it was ants because they had not treated. And so by having a smaller group and getting it started with a smaller group, we were quick to be able to fix, even though it was just me here. Normally we have a staff of 5, but it was just me taking care of that group of 6. We were able to handle all those issues quite quickly. So that's one of the things I definitely learned was, remember, when things have not been used, they may not always work the way you had planned in the past. And so that was very key. We've set our rooms up pretty much to half capacity to social distance. So our largest room normally could hold up to about 100. It went down to 50, and that with tables and that kind of stuff. And a lot of our rooms were set that way. We have 53 bedrooms. One of the advantages we have is every room has their own private bathroom. And so there wasn't a shared bathroom, so that makes it really easy for us to start with groups because we're not worried about them interacting. Pretty much unless they were a married couple, everybody was in single rooms. And I don't know how most of you have it, but we usually, in most of our rooms, we have 2 single beds. So for housekeeping, we actually stripped completely one of the beds so we didn't have to wash everything. But we're washing things from the every sheet, every bedspread gets washed after every group, we've used I think it was Hilton's cleaning system of a 10-point cleaning system, and we put that out and let them know that these are the 10 points that are being cleaned. Yeah, so we've just been running half numbers, very few. I mean, we had 2 retreats in June, and now we won't have another retreat really in here until July 9th, where we'll have a little bit bigger group that wants to come in, but it's a lot of married couples. So that one should work a little bit easier in that. So those are kind of the things that we've come across and learned. And you know, we've had some of the sisters need to stay here, or private retreatants that have come and stayed, and pretty much even setting up signs. This hallway is for this group, whereas these stairs are for this group, and trying to make sure things are separated out in who has what. You know, normally when you come on a retreat, you want to say, yes, use our grounds, use everything. It's like, no, you can't go here, you can't go here. So it's a lot of signage putting up and making sure that people know what is theirs, because we have common spaces. We had to now say, no, this is only for this group, this is only for that group. It's not a common space anymore. So those are probably the main things that I would add in, Justine. Hopefully I've answered what you've put out. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. That was really concise, but also very informative. And I think I already have questions thinking about Kirkridge.
Okay.
And so I'm going to ask that we hold our questions until after GilChrist sharing. And Kirstin, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah. So I put together a bunch of information I want to run through fairly quickly, but I did send this all to Justine and Ben to include in the notes. So, you know, I'm going to talk about some survey numbers and things, but, you know, don't worry about trying to hold on to those things. It'll all be in the notes. So first I wanted to just, for those who are unfamiliar with GilChrist, give you a little bit of an overview. GilChrist is a retreat center that was started in 1995, so we're about 25 years old. We're on 67 acres in a rural community in Southwest Michigan, about halfway between Chicago and Detroit. We have 8 hermitage cabins that are all fully furnished, full bath, full kitchen, completely isolated from one another, tucked into the woods. And then also we have a main gathering house that has an apartment, which is where our groups would normally meet. And then we have another 4-bedroom house that we've used for small groups and long-term solo retreats. Our guests in a typical year are probably about half solo retreat guests and half group retreat participants. And then we have a staff of 7 people. And just to give you an idea, in our current context of people's health vulnerability, 4 of us are 40 years old and younger, but then we have 3 people on our staff who are 65 and older, even somebody who's in their 80s. So that's been a really important consideration for us all along, is not just how do we protect the safety of our guests, but also how do we protect the safety of our staff community. We've been closed since March 16. Currently, we canceled all solo retreats through July 15th, and we canceled all groups through the end of 2020. We're in the process of doing further cancellations on shorter solo retreats, but I will get to that in a minute when I talk about our current plan. And one important thing to know about our center is that we're owned by a foundation based in Kalamazoo, the Fetzer Institute. So part of our really important context that I want to be clear and transparent about is that our whole staff has remained employed through the entire closure, and we have not had the financial instability that a lot of other centers have faced. So that is an aspect of the privilege of our situation that I know a lot of centers don't have. So I just want to be upfront about that as I talk about our plan. So our staff community has spent a lot of time talking about both what is essential and what is possible during a time of global pandemic. And some of the givens that we have been working with as we've imagined a plan for reopening is that we know that our space is very conducive to safe solo retreats, being that we have separate cabins that are completely independent from one another. We also know in our particular geographic context, there is not a great need for emergency COVID-related housing. We looked into that with a number of different local agencies, and just, you know, based on where we are and the patterns of infection and things like that, there was not a need for emergency housing, because that was something we were curious about as a way of serving during this time. We have decided that we don't feel comfortable hosting groups until there is a widely available vaccine or treatment. So that is something that was a given as we imagine the possibilities for us. We also decided that we, as a group, feel most comfortable with a week of downtime in each guest space between guests. And so that was something that has been a key piece of information in how we move forward and how we planned. And then also, we've been deeply aware that there's an opportunity in this moment to deepen both our contemplative practices and our action in the world, ideally in conjunction with one another. We're all feeling very sort of frantic and disrupted and anxious, and recognize that as a retreat center, there might be an opportunity to be a space of counterbalance for that sense of chaos and urgency and constant change, constant changing information. So what we have decided to do moving forward is that from July 15th through October 15th, we are going to be open exclusively for longer solo retreats. So solo retreats of 7 nights or longer. And we're trying to imagine a number of ways that we can support people in doing that, because we know that that's a pretty big deal to take a full week away from daily life, especially right now. We're also holding November, the month of November, for month-long solo retreats. That is not something that we often have space in our calendar to do. And we thought this would be an opportunity to experiment with that and see if there was any interest in that. And then we're also limiting the number of cabins that we reserve at any one time, so that we have the ability to be nimble and pivot if a health concern arises. We have spaces to put people. And I think that'll be an important point of reassurance for our guests too. So a lot of this plan was based on conversation among our staff, but we also did a survey of our guest community. And I'm glad to see Deborah Hockfrost here on the call, GilChrist iPad there. Deborah did an amazing job of getting the survey out and getting the word out around that and doing some analysis of the results. And we ended up getting 213 people who responded, which was amazing and super helpful. And so I'll just summarize some of those results for folks. And again, there will be a lot more detail in the notes that I handed off to Ben and Justine for those who are interested. So we recognized that in this survey, we didn't want to offer anything to our guests as an option that we were not prepared to offer as a staff. So we spent some time discerning what that list of things might be that we could offer. So for example, we did not even include shorter retreats on the list, because we knew that that wasn't something we wanted to do right now for various reasons. It doesn't make any sense to us to open a cabin for a 2-night retreat and then let it sit for a week, just logistically, but then also really trying to be committed to slowing our pace as a retreat center and as a contemplative community. And one of the things that became really compelling to me in the course of the conversation was recognizing that there's also an opportunity for our staff to do work that we always put on the back burner, because there's always something more urgent to attend to. You know, even though somebody shows up for a retreat and we greet them and we get them out to their cabins and they feel such a sense of peace when they come, like, we know that behind the scenes, everything is busy, everything is frantic. We've got to figure out how to get the whole staff off site for a meeting when we've got guests coming in, and something, you know, the toilet is sweating and making a puddle on the floor in the cabin, and like, you know, all of the things. And so We're trying to understand how this moment is an opportunity for us to do some learning as well, and deepen into the opportunity of the moment. So in the survey, people responding to things that we were interested in offering, the overwhelming response was to two things: just simply being able to walk our grounds at GilChrist, and then coming for week or longer solo retreats. So of the 213 people who responded, 132 people said they want to come walk the grounds, and 126 people said they want to come for week or longer solo retreats. So that tells me that our instinct was kind of leaning in a direction that is speaking to needs that our guests are experiencing right now. We had the sort of other, like, what else would you want? And about 20% of our respondents said they would want shorter retreats. Our strategy is that we're referring people to our neighboring retreat center, the Hermitage Community, which is an independent retreat center. They are open for shorter retreats, and they've already been getting requests. And that to us feels like a really good cross-pollination and mutual support strategy right now. And I'm hoping to put together even more of a list of local independent retreat centers who can help fill that gap right now. And my takeaway overall from the survey was that just simply providing space for contemplative practice, as opposed to like a lot of busy new virtual programming and things, like for our particular audience, that space is really what they're looking for. And so that tells us a lot about where to put our energy, which doesn't mean we won't do any of the other things, but we're just aware more of where to focus our energy. We did ask people what specifically would help them feel safe coming back on retreat, and glean some important information from that. We had about the same number of people who said, I would feel comfortable coming back with no changes, as people who said, I would feel comfortable coming back with more strict cleaning regimen and more time in the cabin between guests. So that was also affirming of some of our plans. And we do have a very detailed plan for how we're going to do all of this and modifications to our usual processes. One of the interesting things that popped up that resonates for me with the opportunity that our staff team sees in this moment to do the work we need to do, was we had one person make a comment in the safety question, what would make you safe coming back on retreat? They said, explicit policy and statement about GilChrist's stance on the movement for Black lives, which affects my level of comfort, and speculation about who is welcome and how safe I may feel during my stay. So that is the work that our GilChrist team needs to do to respond to that with integrity and continue to deepen our work in that area, is a primary focus of the space and the time that this new format is opening up for us between now and the end of the year. There were a lot of narrative responses from people that were really meaningful and in-depth and touching, and not surprising themes of grief and longing and hope. And gratitude. I think people have appreciated having us in consistent conversation, sending updates, and just being honest about where we are in the complexity of this whole thing. Being honest about our lament and our regrets and our points of confusion and all of that. So it really feels like, haven't been able to be in face-to-face community with our guests for a while, there is a collective out there. There is a group of people who are doing contemplative practice in the spaces where they are, and holding GilChrist up in the midst of that, and holding our staff team up. And then the feeling is mutual. Our staff has been lighting candles for folks who are sick and folks who have died. And there's just a beautiful mutuality that we're seeing in this moment of pain and disruption. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions in the Q&A time or by email or whatever afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you both. Even in just that short sharing, you can see the diversity and complexity of retreat centers and the response, both the very logistical water heater issues to the what are our great learnings when we can pause and take this time to reflect and engage. So now we have about 10 minutes. If anyone has questions for either of them, you can put it in the chat box and I'll read it, or you can unmute yourself and share. And as Kirstin said, we do have the specific notes. So again, thank you. Peter, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I had a question about how food service worked with both retreat centers.
I can give a quick answer. We don't do food service. Our guests all bring their own food, which is one of the things that makes it possible for us to do what we're doing.
For our place, we normally have our guests go over to the mother house through the lines and eat over there. With the fact that the mother house is closed to the public, we had our food service actually prepare food in throwawayable containers. Everything was throwaway, and so they brought them over. Breakfast and lunch were both hot meals, which we used a thermos box kind of thing that they were put in there to keep warm. And as we had it all set up so they could come down, open the box, take out theirs. We had social distance seating in one of our rooms. We shut it off as a meeting room now and set it up so it was all social distance for 30 people in that room to eat and that. And so it's just a matter of working with the kitchen staff, talking through everything before we got to it of how we were going to handle it, because most of their stuff was buffet before, where you went through and everybody touched every spoon, and now it's all being served even over at the mother house. And so this one, they just thought it's easier for us to put it in containers that they eat out of and then throw away. Even though it's added a little bit more waste, it was the safest way that we could do it.
Disposable utensils as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
So to follow on that question, Paul, how do you provide if people have particular eating needs or restrictions? If you're just, it sounds like it's provided whatever the menu is, you're providing that in a box.
Well, with the last retreat that we had of 15, there was one lady who had a lot of dietary issues, and we just talked with our kitchen staff, and they actually made her some very nice salads, and she was very thankful. She couldn't have certain things at breakfast. She pretty much said, if you could do oatmeal in a container, that would be great, and we were able to do that for her also. So that's the other nice thing about starting out small, is you can help deal with these minor issues that we always provide special dietary meals, whether it's vegetarian or vegan, or can have certain kind of meat. Some people are like no pork or no chicken or something like that. We normally have had those with no problem. And so this was just, trying to find out. And unfortunately, as the groups are now trying to do things and okay, we got to take care of COVID and all these other things, they forget to ask the question, do you have any dietary concerns? And so we had to work with it as they got here, because they forgot to ask that question, where normally it would be one of their first questions.
Just a quick question. Did you recommend social distancing both in the dining room and elsewhere? And did you enforce it? Or is that something that it was put on their shoulders to enforce the social distancing, whether it was eating or in the areas?
In our public spaces, we asked them, if they were in a hallway or up in our front lobby area or around other people, we asked them to have a mask on and social distance. Once that we set up their rooms and set up the eating areas to social distance, but we left that onto them to make the call of whether they were going to wear masks during their time together or whether they were going to social distance. One stayed social distance in their meeting, the other group somewhat broke those down because I know they even had small groups and the chairs weren't 6 feet apart. So, but that's a group also that had quarantined themselves for 14 days beforehand.
Yeah,
So-
were they wearing masks most of the time that they were on retreat at your place?
They were when they were in public space. We didn't necessarily go in and, check
Small
on them
group,
in their
yeah.
own rooms. And that. So, by the way, it's good to see you, Bob. I was in Diocese of Joliet for many years.
Oh, I know. I remember going and talking to you.
Yep.
We have a couple questions in the chat. One of them is, how did you determine a week between guests or any of that process? What's the kind of turnover process? And why a week instead of 3 days? Kirstin.
Yeah, so that was based on some of the earlier information coming out about how long the virus can survive on different surfaces. So when a guest leaves, the laundry will sit on the porch for at least 24 hours before our staff interacts with it. The cabin will sit for 3 days empty, ideally with the windows open and the fan on. And then there will be a day when our staff goes in and sanitizing, cleaning. We got a particular sanitizing solution and actually a peat sprayer to be able to do as many surfaces as possible in addition to our normal cleaning. And in that day, the laundry will go back in, all of that, and then there will be 3 days that the cabin sits again before somebody comes in. So that's kind of where we arrived at the week.
For us, it just happened that they fell far enough apart that there wasn't, but we were not touching the rooms for 24 hours if possible, and sometimes 3 days before we do the cleaning of those rooms and that. But that's about as far as we've gone. But they've been already a week or two apart. So.
Great. And about,
With both of you, I'm curious about how, and you may have spoken to this, I had to come on the call late, I'm sorry for that. How has it cut down on the volume, your normal volume? Would you say, is it reduced to 25% or 50% of your normal volume? Number one. And number two, you're able, do you see this in some way as how long term can you sustain that? Is that really I look at the cost load and the loss of income up against each other, and it really is daunting. So I'm just asking that from each of you.
And I'm not sure yet what our capacity will look like and income compared to normal times. I would guess maybe we'd be at about 30 to 40% of the nights that we would normally do and the amount of money that we would bring in. But again, that's why I wanted to be transparent to you about our particular location as an organization that's supported by a foundation. So our freedom, and we're also hoping that we can send some of that revenue to other centers that are independent and really depending on that income.
For us, it's probably about 10 to 20% of what we would have in June. And that normally we would have, I want to say we had probably 10 to 15 groups that have canceled for June. And even now, if they wanted to come, we're only running at about 50%. Because normally we could fit 2 in a room, you only put 1 in a bedroom. Our largest meeting gathering space, like I said, normally would fit 100, it's down to 50. So 50 is pretty much our max, even though it used to be a good over 100 people that we could easily do with both 2 overnight groups and a day group coming in. We'd have 3 different things happening right now in our building. And that, so it's way down from what we would normally have. Financially though, for us, we're very similar to GilChrist and the fact that the poor handmaids, none of us got laid off or furloughed. They've paid staff the whole entire time, even when we were working from home. And, you know, they know this isn't our fault and see it, you know, it's going to come back. I mean, I have over 80% of from January to June that we had booked for this year, which was going to be at one of our record years. I have 80% of them already back for next year, signed up for 2021. So we see the hope in the future.
Yeah.
One of the questions in the chat was, what happens if someone gets sick while at retreat, or at least starts showing symptoms during the time together?
That's part of the reason that we're leaving some cabins open at all times. It may very well be safest for somebody who develops symptoms on retreat to stay where they are, and we want to be able to support that. That's also, Mark was asking about, you know, people filling out forms, signing waivers, that sort of thing. We've significantly modified our reservation form so that people have to look at and read each individual change and shift that they're agreeing to by coming. And one of those is that they'll notify us immediately if they become sick while they're on retreat or after they go home. And we're just going to have to make a plan on a case-by-case basis based on the circumstances as we're finding.
I was reading ahead and was starting to answer another question. Can you repeat the question? Old age.
Absolutely. Well, also, there are many questions.
Yes, I know. I've seen too many of them.
And if anyone has answers to that with what you're
Yes.
doing in retreat centers, I encourage you to respond in the chat box as well. The question was about if someone shows symptoms or gets sick during a retreat.
Yes, that's right. Well, the nice thing with the second group, they actually brought a nurse with them and was monitoring everybody right as they went along. We would have enough bedrooms that we could quarantine somebody into their own bedroom for the time being and would not charge for them to stay if they stayed for the whole 14 days. And that haven't had that happen yet, have had no illnesses or even question of illnesses. And the two groups have now been, it has been 14 days since the last group. No reports back that, oh, we had somebody that actually did have it. Now we have to quarantine our whole self. But I mean, the nice thing is we're separate from that building. There's only a few of us who work in this building. So it would be possible to just leave a person there or to quarantine off an area. And then probably a lot of our staff would have a quarantine if it did come up to make sure we were safe also for 14 days.
Just, Paul, just to piggyback on that. So there's a lot of details there in terms of if one of your staff comes into contact with somebody that had it, or one of your staff actually got it, but you don't know where they got it from, and what happens to your facility in terms of either closing down or quarantine for 14 days or all the people getting tested. And I haven't quite figured that out, so I'm looking for anybody's input.
Well, I'll answer that, but anybody else can jump in, please. Is that for the most part, usually we only have one person on our staff that is in contact with one person from their group. And so, and that's whether it's a sponsored or a hosted group. And so it would really be up, that one person probably would be the only one who has had actual physical contact with that group. Our offices are over on the one end of the building. All the rooms and the conferences are a little bit more farther down the hall. If a person here didn't, now I don't want to do this. I don't want to even say this because I'll jinx myself, but we have a facility that has a two-year Catholic college, a nursing home, senior living, the retreat center, and a farm, and Sister's Mother House here, and we have had no cases at all on our campus. Nobody, no staff, no sisters, no residents have had any COVID-19. Now, tomorrow, I'm sure I'm going to hear somebody got it, which will throw us all into a loop. But because I said it, now it's going to happen. But I mean, we would just, yes, we would probably quarantine. We'd probably, clean the areas. If a person right now, because we haven't had a group here in a week or two, if somebody on our staff said they had it, we would probably not have to cancel anything. We would just probably clean a little bit more than we have. And that, I guess, kind of is, until you have it happen, then you'd have to figure out how you're going to deal with it and try to let those know that have been here. Communication.
Yeah, and I think that communication piece is really key. I think of this in the same realm as what we've learned from close calls with bed bugs, that just by being open with people about the thing that all of us are afraid of and taking a deep breath, doing our homework ahead of time so we feel prepared to face the circumstance and make a plan. I feel like that's the best we can do. Each situation is going to be different.
Yeah.
I think the reminder to take a breath and know that this is a learning curve for everyone and not just also retreat centers. It's a great learning curve for us. It's a really good kind of pause in the time to say, yes, we're going to figure this out, but we also can slow down and breathe and engage. It's also a great turning point in our conversation to be mindful of time. Thank you both so much. I'm wondering if you could put your email addresses in the chat box if people have continuous conversations and questions. And of course, we can continue the questions into this conversation, but we wanted to give time to everyone. If there has been a great learning or tangible thing you wanted to share, as we're all learners and knowers here in this space. So what I'd like to invite us to do now is kind of shift gears slightly. And for anyone, if they want to speak, you're welcome to do so. And when you're ready, I invite you to identify who you are and what organization or retreat center you represent. And then one tangible takeaway or learning that you believe other retreat centers could benefit from. We have about 45 minutes for that, and I'm grateful that there are 30 people on the call, so I'd also just invite us to be mindful of the time. And the chat box is doing wonderful for answering questions, so you can also use that if that feels more comfortable to you. So this time is all of our time. If anyone would like to go first, again, name, organization or retreat center, and then one takeaway or learning. And then at the end, we can go back to kind of a Q&A to close out our time together.
This is Sally here. I'm on the board at Kirkridge. And I would say that my biggest learning, and probably our biggest learning, is how much can be accomplished on Zoom. We have had over 1,000 people attend online programs since Kirkridge shut down mid-March, which is more than double what we had all last year. Everything that we've offered free. We're really working out of a gift economy, trying to meet needs, be accessible, and be transparent that we need money and ask for donations. But I'm really stunned both at the response, how many people show up, people who've never been to Kirkridge, a lot of new people, but also people who've been to Kirkridge for years and years and years and now thought they could never come back because they're too old to travel or too physically disabled. So it's been a huge learning for us.
This is Sister Margaret Diener at Santa Sabina Center in San Rafael. And I would say I came to a point where living in two sort of competing universes was really so stressful that we needed to decide whether we could really think about opening and what that would mean. And there were so many layers to it. The hotels in our area are still not open, so we fall under that proviso. And as a short-term rental, if you will. And that plus all the food considerations that we're known for our food. And so it became very, very daunting to think about opening. Meanwhile, we needed to think about if we could put programs online because that seemed to be the trend. We made a decision this last week now to be closed through December. So marshaling our small staff's resources, we're turning our attention to moving as many programs online as we can. And that's a big learning curve for us since presence is the core to what we do. So we have been really, fortunately, someone who joined my staff who is very good at this. And so we're hopeful that our efforts will generate some confidence as we go forward. But really, I began to see that the increase in the presence of COVID is mushrooming. This morning's prediction was that we would see 100,000 cases a day in the near term. So it's pretty high risk. And the county itself has been fairly fortunate, but we know that our best move is to kind of remain without reopening our doors. And it's really such a difficult thing. And I listen to all of you who are making some efforts to bring people back in, and I admire the effort. I just hope we continue to listen carefully to one another to hear what the consequences are.
I'm Sister Sue from the Dominican Retreat and Conference Center in Niskayuna, New York. And we have a 45-bedroom retreat house with shared bathrooms down the hallway. And we have a windmill that's a private hermitage. So we have opened up the hermitage. And like Kirstin was saying, we're allowing a week in between. In other words, so when somebody leaves, we wait 3 days, cleaning goes in and whatnot. We are getting ready to open the retreat center July 15th for a small group. We have a group that comes regularly. They will be happy to work with us in terms of figuring things out. And we're kind of basing it on however many toilet stalls we have. So they're going to have an assigned toilet stall. So we're limiting it to 13 in attendance. As a result, some of our hosted programs are canceling because their team in and of itself would not fit into that number. So some groups are staying, they're fine with the number. Some are saying the number limitation is not going to work for them. Our sponsored programs, we're hoping to start those in September and to do them as a hybrid so that some people could be on site and some people could be watching through Zoom or whatnot. I think my greatest learning was that I needed to have a water mitigation plan. And that was the town saying that larger buildings that have laid dormant or underused for a period of time have to have the whole flushing of the system and testing of the water and whatnot. And as much as I knew I had to flush the system, I didn't get the testing of the water thing. So yeah, we're in the process of water mitigation as we're getting the house back up. So thanks.
I'm Bob Dressel from LaSalle Manor Retreat Center, a retreat center in Plano, Illinois, owned by the French Christian Brothers. We're on 47 acres, 55 miles straight west of Chicago in the middle of cornfields. We've been closed since March 15th, and the next group I have coming supposedly is in a week from today, actually. A group of 21 from Virginia Dominican Kairos group. So that's going to kind of be our test case, and their original numbers were 40 and they're down to 20, and I think that's a good thing, as Paul said, starting out small, because we just, I had unplugged the freezers and trying to keep our electricity down over the last 3 months, and we plugged in one of the freezers and it's not working. So you're right, not all things work after they've been off for a while. So you better test all your systems. A takeaway that I found out was all the different projects that you wanted to do and didn't have the time because there were groups coming in and out. This is one saving grace. For us anyways, we put in a lift, a mini elevator, and I couldn't have done that without the place being vacant, but I couldn't afford, and I found a donor, so it worked out. And again, I'm just hoping that we can get things back to normal, whatever that normal is, and even if it's smaller groups, so that we can afford to keep this place moving. We do high school retreats mainly. We have about 5,000 students that come out to our facility, and then about 1,500 adults throughout a lot of the weekends. So it's one group at a time.
My name's Nancy Golan, and I'll just pick up because Bob and I are kind of neighbors. Cabrini Retreat Center is 7 miles north of O'Hare, so we are right outside of Chicago. We serve a similar demographic to Bob's. About 80% of our guests are teenagers. Bob does offer programming, and we typically do hosting. So I think our biggest learning, which other people have said, has been just really using the time well. We're sponsored by the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, who have corporate documents and corporate goals. And this has really been a time to look at both their locally geographic province goals and national goals, and to use Zoom to meet with, we have one other sponsored institution in Chicago, which is the National Shrine of St. Francis, which is in the city. And we have been talking for years about getting together, doing corporate efforts, and we have been able to do that virtually. It does not translate into a financial gain, but certainly has gains in many other areas. The other thing that I've found personally to be very helpful is I'm involved with a group out of Ann Arbor, Michigan called Zing Train, which does professional training based on servant leadership, not necessarily Christian based, but they're basically working with people in the hospitality industry. So that's been particularly helpful. In fact, I'm signed up for a master class that runs through the whole month of July as an opportunity to continue my professional development and look beyond just the retreat center model to what restaurants and hotels are doing, and to understand better what the future will hold. I did have a meeting last week with the sister trustees, and they're basically hospital sisters. So although they have not made a final decision yet, that's only because I'm kind of resisting a little bit. They would really like to see us close at least until January, just because I think they're aware of all the risks and the requirements needed to really reopen safely.
Nancy, can you say the name of that training again?
It's called Zing Train. I'll put it in the chat. I just saw somebody from Grand Rapids just said they know about them too.
So this is Margarita from Grand Rapids, Michigan, from Dominican Center. A lot of Dominican centers here, which is kind of fun to see. I'll be quick. I think, you know, we closed March 13th, had to make a huge pivot, as all of you have. Yeah, and I think one maybe not surprised me, but inspires me is how a group of staff and a group of committed people, given the opportunity, can really make a shift and emerge anew. And so I see that as our hopeful future. So that's one thing I think during this time I can contribute to this.
This is Brooke from the Watershed Center, and we are a retreat center that focuses on social justice organizations in the Hudson Valley of New York. And we are closed. We have a farm on our property, and our whole staff is still with us. We're kind of a family outside of being coworkers, and have been hosting. We're hosting a gathering for the Scatticoke. We're going to be doing takeout food and a socially distanced gathering for the indigenous tribe that's here on Saturday. But that's really the first thing that we've done. And we just put out a new program that we're calling Frontline Revival, which is a weekend of rest, rejuvenation, and revival for frontline folks, either frontline organizers or workers. Obviously, with the movement for Black Lives so active, a lot of people have been organizing, and a lot of immigrant rights organizers have been full-on organizing, and lots of other folks. So we put out this call for folks who wanted to do, we're calling it Seriously Socially Distanced Tenting Retreats, and we got a big donation of tents and of air mattresses, and we didn't feel comfortable having anyone in the buildings. We're very communal. Like our smallest room has 2 beds, and all the bathrooms are shared. So that for us wasn't really an option, and we definitely have a lot of high risk folks who are in our pod. And we put it out this weekend to about 500 alumni. We only wanted to do it with people who'd been to Watershed because we knew we wouldn't be able to host them to the same degree that we usually do. And we didn't want that to be people's only experience of Watershed, although people can bring others. And at the moment, the response is underwhelming. So that's what I'm sharing. And, you know, our public transportation to Watershed, which is usually quite good, is halted on the weekends at the moment. I've also had experiences in the past where it's fairly obvious to me that people with comfort and experience with camping, that there are cultural, race, and class dynamics. And they're mostly upper middle class white people who have been excited about our camping options in the past. And that is in fact what is showing up in terms of who is applying. And that hasn't been our priority for this moment. We've definitely wanted to be of use in particular to, you know, hospital orderlies, hospital workers. And I don't know that this offering is actually going to be, it's what we felt like we could do. It's a lot of work to do it, to sort of shift things and get things prepared. We're getting campsites that are very, you know, making campsites out of like the woods and different places all over our 75 acres. But I will let you know if it gets suddenly more popular than it is at the moment. And I want to figure out what the barriers are, whether it's public transportation or whether people are just not excited about being in tents, or whether what we've presented feels unsafe. We're very clear about our safety measures, and they feel safe to us in that people's families or pods would not be in contact with each other. But there's something that is keeping people from wanting to come. So I will let you know. We will do the first one on July 10th, possibly with a very small group of mostly upper middle class white people. So yeah, more soon.
This is Jean Richardson, and I'm on staff at Kirkridge Retreat Center as well, and also serve on the steering committee for the Retreat Center collaboration. And I think one of the pieces I want to add into this conversation is really my delight in seeing so many retreat centers on this call. And, you know, in a crisis, we need each other. But the reality is, in a non-crisis, we still need each other. Retreat centers are really struggling in our culture, and yet have such an important role to play. And so I am just delighted that that so many people are showing up, and we're talking about issues that are really critical and important, and hopefully more partnerships and collaborations will begin to emerge, especially in this time of Zoom, where it takes nothing to go visit a center in California or go visit a center up in Canada. Crossing over the borders, I just think the opportunities for us at this time to work together as a unique community are enormous, and we're just at the beginning of that exploration.
Peter, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of piggyback on what Brooke was saying about underwhelming response. So I'm from the Dharmakaya Center for Wellbeing. We're in Cragsmore, New York. We're a small Buddhist retreat center, and we shut down until mid-July. Many of my retreats, I was able to move until the fall programs, and we just put out a big e-blast. We're opening, here's our protocols. We had very thorough list of what we were doing, and kind of crickets in response. And so I don't know, is there still just a lot of fear about gathering in any size group? So I just wanted to throw that out there, that we have a really nice lineup of programs and just really haven't had any response to them. So.
My name is Colleen Gregg. I'm from Mercy Center, Auburn. It's Sacramento's the closest airport. Auburn is on your way to the Sierra foothills. I really resonate with the presentations today. We have a unique circumstance that we could have one-way pedestrian traffic throughout our campus. Every meeting space, except two small ones, has an entry door and an exit door. We were very excited to open to our first hosted group mid-July. But, I'm hesitant now just because of the realities. And we have a convent, a Sisters of Mercy convent on the property. Our buildings are not connected. But just thinking of what it takes to keep the group of sisters very safe. So I'm not positive we'll be doing that. My learning is that it's costly to open. We have our kitchen staff. We will be providing meals all on, we'll probably give 2 meal options, probably a vegetarian option and a non-vegetarian option. We'll serve them in containers, but everything we're serving is going to be biodegradable, and that's just more expensive. What it's going to take to sterilize and clean is it's going to be costly compared to the revenue decrease throughout. But one thing we're hoping is that we've had private retreatants come, or people who are doing Zoom programming, and they're doing their Zoom on our campus. We also have a hermitage. So we have 42 rooms total. But they're doing their Zoom work, their virtual work from the hermitage, and really kind of getting away from their shelter in place and being able to really have contemplative time. So, one of our centering prayer retreats coming up in the fall is going to be virtual because our presenters are from different states. but we're inviting the folks to come and do their virtual work on the campus. So I think we're going to have strict screening. We're going to do the same screening that we do for each staff member when we come, a temperature check in the questions and so forth. But I just really appreciate that the days you're talking about having in between groups. I hadn't considered that. But anyway, yeah, I think the learning is and I think we're going to learn as we go as well, just like the other centers. So, and we could very well, depending on what happens in the fall, then, go back to sheltering in place. But if we had a case where someone is sick, I think what we would do, because if we have multiple persons, is we've been talking about this, is everyone should probably go home and quarantine for 14 days. So we would probably stop the programming and have staff and the other guests be aware and quarantine. But that could be subject to change too. Thank you.
Sister Jane Marie, are you speaking? You're on mute. And then I saw Maureen, you also raised your hand if you'd like to go.
The Franciscan Center has also been closed for since the middle of March. And we were hoping the first responders groups that have been coming for trauma-related training for years would not cancel, but they have, because as you know from the news, Florida is one of the worst places right now. We were planning to open tomorrow, but that's been changed now to maybe the middle of July. But like Sally said, even though we don't have near the number of people, our Zoom retreats have just started, but they've been very well attended in terms of what might be our usual attendance. And the people who are coming, as Sally said so well, wouldn't be able to come anymore. I'm not all of them, but a lot of them. So that's made a big difference, I think. But we're still struggling to know whether we can make it financially. And this is our 50th year. So there's a lot of hope that that can happen. The Franciscan Sisters of Allegheny, New York, are the sponsors of the center, but it's not the source of the income. It comes from the retreats.
Okay, can you hear me if I speak?
Yes.
Now? Okay, thank you, Justine. I'm Jane Marie Kudlatz. I'm at Villa Maria Education Spirituality Center in Villa Maria, PA. We're right on the Ohio-Pennsylvania border, just 1 mile into Pennsylvania. Where we stand, we closed March 13th. Where we stand right now is officially we're closed till July 15th, but we probably will not be accepting any guests until at least August. We have several small hosted groups that really want to come, but we have made the stipulation that we will not, we have a capacity of 200, but we have made the stipulation that we will not accept a group over 25. And so that is all we will look at this point in time. And because we are on our mother house property, we have facilities that are not going to be available to our guests that are normally available to them. And as people were talking about being underwhelmed, in one sense, I'm a little bit overwhelmed because people are putting pressure on us saying, we really want to come. And we're having to say, but we're not sure we can accommodate you. And these are the limitations. And so we've got to be very clear in terms of what they would have to do, how they would have to, follow the protocols, where they cannot go on the campus. And so that's kind of where we are with it. We are going to try and do some programming, which is going to be mostly day programming, not overnight programming, and again, very small groups. So we're going to try and work with small groups. I guess one big learning for me that has been encouraging is that as we have had to cancel, the majority of our groups, as others have mentioned, have tried to reschedule or are talking about rescheduling next year. So it's not like we're going to forget about you. We still want to come next year. But the other thing, because we do some extensive programming with speakers from outside the area, I'm getting, let's postpone. It's not a matter of cancel. Can we reschedule? Can you maybe look at me? I just had a conversation with Ilya DeLeo because we had her coming in October. She will not come because she won't fly. But she contacted me and said, can we postpone? Can we pick another date next year? I was thrilled because she's very hard to get. But anyway, so that's kind of been my learning, that there still is a tremendous desire, and that's encouraging.
Thank you. We have about 5 more minutes if any other staff of retreat centers or organizations want to speak into the larger group. Go ahead, Ann.
I'm Ann Dillon. I am on the staff at Manresa Jesuit Retreat House, just outside of the Detroit area. So we're suburban. We have about 38 acres. We have capacity for 68 bedrooms. We've paced it out, we've measured it out, and our capacity for the first semester will be 22. This will be for our dining room, our chapel, our large meeting room, being able to space people out throughout the house in terms of bedrooms. I think one of and we're planning on our first soft opening July 20th with an 8-day, 16, 17 person individually directed retreat session. So that will be our shakedown group, our guinea pig group. I think one of the things that we've learned is how to help our community stay in touch, excuse me, especially with the familiar Jesuits. There are about 6 Jesuits associated with the retreat house. And our method has become each week, each ministry person, including myself, does a short 10, 15-minute presentation that we then can put online. So that's Monday, Friday. Wednesday, one of the Jesuits celebrates GilChrist. Excuse me. Another one on Sunday posts an art reflection. So there becomes 4 opportunities for people to find us, mostly through our website, to have that touch base. And our numbers for that have been surprising. One week there was over 400 people coming in to hear one of the Jesuits. Our daily mass would have been 50, 60. So I think what we're learning is there are many ways of that touch. We just have to be more creative and more imaginative. So far, we'll see what we say in July, end of July, beginning of August, but we look forward to the 20th of July to see what happens.
Thanks, Anne. Is there 1 or 2 more people that would like to speak? Kitty?
I really, I'm not ready for learnings yet somehow out of all of this. I'm trying to think what's my big learning. Maybe, I think it was from a previous call with all of you about, in times of chaos, the impossible becomes possible. So I think here at Stony Point Center, we're in the lower Hudson River Valley. We have 90 guest rooms. 70 of them have individual bathrooms in the hallways, not in the rooms. So we are putting together protocols theoretically, we're allowed to have people back as long as it's a group under 25. We have no one on the schedule for July. We're talking with a couple of groups in August and beyond, and everybody's really iffy. And so we're not quite sure. We went through a major downsizing of staff 2 weeks ago. We had them all on thanks to the PPP and the Presbyterian Church that paid for them to stay home. And then we couldn't keep it going with no income in sight. So we now, instead of 50 plus staff, we're now down to 10. And so we are starting like a new organization, really, just starting over from scratch this week, and seeing how the 10 of us are going to cover the bases of this 30-acre property in suburban Hudson River Valley. So what we're trying to communicate is, yes, we've had a major downsizing of staff, but we're not closing. And we're really, it's challenging. The communication in this time is really challenging because there's so much to communicate and it keeps changing. And it's really hard for people to hear it. You know, the listening ears have a lot of stuff going on in their lives right now. So I didn't realize that how critical the communication is over and over again. No, we're not closing. We're starting out again small, but we're still here. Thanks.
Thanks, Kitty. There are two screens, so if someone raised their hand and I didn't call you into the space, I am sorry. Oh, my cat is now joining the space. So I'm just going to give it 1 second to keep it open until we kind of switch to questions and cross learning. Right, and about the 10 minutes we have left in this space, if there are any questions you had, as so much information was shared, if you took notes and want to ask that question now or want to add something to what you shared, that this would be the space to do that. I also see some email sharing, which I think is lovely, and Margarita and Jean have been speaking of collaboration, so if there's another retreat center you wanted to connect with, I think that's okay to ask to share contact information for offline conversations as well.
I just ask if any of you in your planning for reopening met with the health department officials in your respective areas at all. Was that part of any of your preparation?
Hi, Margaret, this is Claire, and hi, everybody. I'm at Sienna Retreat Center on Lake Michigan between Chicago and Milwaukee. And Margaret, in response to your question about have we been in touch with the health department, kind of yes. Here at Sienna, which is sponsored by the Racine Dominican Sisters, there is a convent on the grounds where about half of the sisters live, and there is a health center sponsored by a different healthcare provider, separate from the sisters, and then the retreat center. So there are really three entities on the campus, and since July we have had a reopening committee, which was kind of our COVID management committee on when this first started, and now kind of what does reopening look like on this end. So we meet just about every single week, and a member of that committee has been in touch with the local health department. Their big thing really has been contact tracing. So we have a form developed, we being the collective we here on campus, and the retreat center is going to use the same form for the sake of collaboration, really, and making sure that we're all on the same page, because the buildings are all connected via corridor, and there's only a door between them, and the healthcare workers, the food staff workers and the maintenance workers go in and out to all three entities. So there is some crossover. So that in our conversations with the health department, they basically went through what are we doing, and really mostly it's been what do you have in place for contact tracing, because if they need to get in touch with those folks, they need contact information, date of arrival for everybody. So the way we're working that is when a guest arrives, we don't have this in place yet, we're planning on reopening in August. Mostly right now, it's looking like private retreatants and some small groups. Right now, we're not allowed yet in Wisconsin to have groups of 10 or more as of now. At least that's what the guidelines are. And we're gonna follow those guidelines here anyway at Siena. So when a guest checks in, they have the health screening done with a symptoms check, and have you been on a cruise ship for the last 14 days? Don't think anybody's answering a yes to that one. But anyway, so all of these different things, and then their contact info, date of arrival, that gets filed into a binder that the local health department has organized. We'll either do it organized by first letter of last name or by date. And if the health department ever needed to do contact tracing through our center, we could hand over that binder. So that's what we are have talked with the health department about.
Go ahead, Peter.
I had a quick question. I heard a few people talk about online learning, and I was just wondering if there was any suggestions for good, simple, affordable online learning platforms.
Peter, we're using Zoom Pro, which is I think $14.95 a month. But at one point, where one of our recovery evenings had 170 people, we had to go and buy more for that particular one. But usually that wouldn't be a problem for us, like it probably is for some of your bigger places. But that one has been very adequate with its, people are very patient with its problems, I find. And I've conducted now 4 or 5 retreats that way, and it seems to be doing okay.
Peter, just to answer your question and maybe an invitation to other retreat centers, that I just participated in a conversation about creating contemplative spaces in this type of platform, and it was very enlightening just to share ideas and perspectives, and just maybe a thumbs up or down if anybody would like to have that conversation within a retreat center community call, perhaps, about ways in which we create a contemplative space using Zoom. Okay.
Thanks, Margarita, for that offer. I put in the chat box, one of my last questions is, where do we go from here, which is a big question and not expected to be answered, but what can the RCC do to continue this conversation, or if there was something specific in that, and how do we support each other? What kind of support do you need, and what kind of support can you offer in this time?
I would love more conversations about alternative ways of generating operating revenue other than what we all have as our traditional kind of in-person retreats. So the online is one, but also thinking about like affiliate marketing. You know, if we have teachers that we would normally have host programs at the center, but now they're doing them online, but perhaps we can help market their events. And is there some sort of affiliate kickback from doing that kind of stuff, and any other alternative revenue generators? Yeah.
Great idea, Meg. Thank you. Kitty put in the chat box meals and catering. I think that was one of my large takeaways too. Kirkridge is looking at how do we hire back staff, and like Paul had mentioned, we do mostly buffet style. So we're looking at partnering with local catering services who are already preparing for that, supporting a local business, and then being able to provide that option to our guests. So I think food and food services is definitely a hot topic right now, Kitty. Thank you. Anything else?
It's kind of discouraging when I think about all the disposable stuff that's going on these days. That has to. Starting with plastic gloves. No, whenever I put on plastic gloves, I think of all the plastic gloves every day across this country that everybody's using, and it's just, it's depressing.
I agree, Kitty, that the thing that's been so difficult is to witness all the things we've been working toward in terms of sustainable practices, care for creation, and so forth. You know, now they're saying, well, if you have to go somewhere, go by yourself in a car, don't get into public transportation, don't have multiple people, etc. You get the point. But it's really at every layer. It's like we're being undone.
I think I want to just express another invitation or another layer to the same invitation. Just if you have an idea for a topic for a community call and you're not seeing it show up and it came to you in the middle of the night, just email me directly so that I can have it on my radar, because I'm trying to put together a schedule for the rest of the summer that meets our needs and meets it often enough, but not so often that you're like, another one of those calls. So trying to find that balance. And so you kind of giving me that feedback is super helpful. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
And just a question about the frequency. I mean, every week is hard. So
that's something we talked about this morning, that I think for the next couple months, we're going to go down to two meetings a month. And so maybe second and fourth Tuesdays or first and third Tuesdays. We haven't finalized that, but I'm hoping to get that finalized in the next couple days, and I'll get you the invites for July and August so we can know what we're doing.
Well, and I would think keeping asking the question about frequency even after you do two. I mean, there is a point at which we need this. I need the support. I appreciate the support, but it's like too much on the call.
That's really informative, and I think, Ben, to close us out, maybe you could also talk about, if you can't make these calls, because it is so much and we've asked so much to try and care for the carers, you all are also caring for your spaces, and we're hoping to support you. And if you can't make the call, that's okay, but we record and take notes. Ben, do you want to talk about where they are before we close?
Sure. So on our website, we have a blog, and I've been sort of treating the blog like an extension of these community calls. So our conversations are recorded and posted there so that we can go back and reference them. And then either Justine or I are typically also taking notes. So there's like a typed version an audio version, and a video like YouTube version. So all of that is accessible by all of us. And if you want to share it with another center, it's also shareable. So if there's a topic that you're like, oh, the way they hosted that call was so well done, let's hope, right? That's what you're going to say. That was a terrible call. Look at this video of this horrible call I attended. No, if you have a good call that you think that, oh, at the 20-minute mark, there's that quote, I want to check that. That's available for you to go back and check. So.
And so as we close out, thank you again. Thank you to Lindenwood and GilChrist for kind of being spotlights. And thank you all, thinking your questions and your learnings. This space was wonderful because we all saw each other's vulnerability and also as catalysts of change and hope. This has been said, our notes are usually a little bit smaller, but it was 7 pages of notes, which means it was just so chock full of content today. And so I'm grateful. Ben took notes today, by the way. I'm grateful for that time.
If I didn't look at you, it's because I was just, yes.
And I'm grateful for all of you to share and learn as we are trying to figure this out together. So we are done right on the dot. Thank you all for all of your time and energy you gave to the call, and I hope you are well.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Be well, all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The chat box is not small either. I'm trying to cut and paste that. Wow.
Save it.
Yep. Saving it.
Definitely. Thanks, Paul.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome, Justine.
That's great. Thank you so